Area MPO committee to order. Tracy, how are we doing on the quorum?
We have online.
We have 11 people online. I'm not 100%, but they're all represented.
We have quorum.
Folks, yeah, and if you are online, please do indicate your name and who you're representing, just so we can take accurate notes for the minutes. So second item of business is going to be approval of the agenda. Since we are in person now, I am going to seek not just the motion in a second, but we're going to take a vote of approvals. So with that, I'll seek a motion in a second, please.
Terms on move approval.
Also second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next up, we have the minutes. They were provided ahead of time and they're in your packet. We have a motion in a second.
Terms on move approval.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next up, we have a presentation on the comprehensive safety action plan. Gunnar.
Good morning, everyone. Really great to have you in person. I'm going to do a very brief introduction here and then pass it off to Tool Design. As I believe everyone in the room knows, we've been working on a comprehensive safety action plan. The bottom line for this plan is that once we have it, all jurisdictions in the region will be eligible for dollars for implementation through Safe Streets for All. So we're working on an aggressive timeline, trying to get that plan buttoned up prior to the next NOFO release. We believe that NOFO release is coming out in March. That's what DOT is advertising on the website. So fingers crossed that with administration change, that schedule holds. That's our operating assumption. So today we're going to talk about what it will be in the plan, what you can expect to see in it. And I'm going to pass it off to Tool Design to walk through that. And also, the last time we were together, we did a workshop about a regional application for implementation dollars. We'll do a recap on that for you as well. Go ahead, Dean.
Actually, I'm going to kick us off, Gunnar. So if you don't mind going to the next slide. First, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Sean Murphy Lopez, and I'm with Tool Design. I'm a planner. And I'm just going to give a brief overview of where we're at, where we've gone on this project. So this slide rather shows the 8 major steps that have to be complete in order to get to that grant application that Gunnar just mentioned. So on the very left-hand side, we've done a lot of stakeholder engagement. We've taken a look at where things are at today in Des Moines. We've looked a lot of the data out there. Those are the first 2 items on the very left-hand side. The next 4 that have dotted lines around them, the countermeasure toolbox, the toolkit, the Vision Zero toolkit, and the Safe Streets visualization, the crash data analysis, and the implementation plan and program. Those are all things that we are working on wrapping up right now so that they can all be put into the comprehensive safety action plan. And I do want to say too, I apologize that the plan wasn't to you guys today. That's not a responsibility of the MPO staff, that they dropped the ball at all. The consultant team, we fell behind. We thought we were going to have it to you today. And I'm going to show you how we're going to get there as far as what the outline of the plan will look like. And then Dean will talk about the schedule after he mentions some of the items that you all have already talked about previously. He's going to give you an update on those. So if you go to the next slide, Gunnar. So the Federal Highway Administration has 8 minimum components for a comprehensive safety action plan. The items are on the left in that box. They have a nice PDF. It's a 2-pager. It's on their website. I've linked it on this slide. It describes each one of these 8 components. If you go to the next slide, what we've done here is we've shown in this chart what is going to go into the MPO's comprehensive safety action plan and how it relates to those requirements. So for the most part, we're just going to name the chapters to replicate what FHWA requires. There are a couple items where we're either combining or we're reordering things to to make the plan flow how we think it's going to make the most sense to a reader if they read it from beginning to end. So the first example of that is with leadership, commitment, and goal setting. Those are the resolutions. Those are the, saying by this year we'll be working toward zero fatalities. And then also the planning structure. Who's responsible for not only adopting the plan, but implementing the plan and overseeing the plan after the adoption, after the grant application is sent in. So we want to combine those two into a chapter called Commitment to Vision Zero. Pretty much all the others are exactly named how FHWA has it as their required component. If you go to the next slide, there will also be several appendices in the plan. And those appendices, I'll just take the top one as an example. Appendix A, the crash analysis memo. That's a longer memo. It's going to be something like 40, 50, 60 pages long, but it's going to be boiled down into something more readable with key findings, a couple of the really important maps, and that's going to go in Chapter 3, Safety Analysis on the left-hand side. So Appendix E, we've highlighted that in bold because we know that's what a lot of the member communities are really interested in, what will happen in each community and what will be available for them if they want to submit their own grant applications. So that's what Dean is going to talk about now. And I'm happy to take any questions about the outline or especially the schedule after he shares that, after he goes through his slides.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. And just to say for everyone, we're going to get through all the information here, and then we'll open it up for conversation at the end here too. So just hold on to your questions until we get through it, just for the sake of timeliness here. So like Sean said, I wanted to highlight some of those some deliverable items that each member community probably is going to be most excited about using and most directly, applicable to, we'll say your day-to-day life as a technical staff person or as an elected official. The first thing I wanted to highlight is that we are putting together a safety projects priority list for each community. I've put the example for Ankeny on the screen here too. I just wanted to highlight a few different things with this. You can see that the priority list is categorized into critical, high, and medium project priorities. That's to help kind of differentiate which projects more or less should go before others. That being said, we are going to be writing this plan to be flexible because we know that due to, infrastructure condition or due to maybe there's development going on nearby, or there's other things that need to be, taken advantage of, or, schedule wise, need to be considered. You can take things out of order if you deem that necessary, but this is kind of what, we'll say the data is showing us based on the, the prioritization scoring criteria that we use for this project. So you can see that there are critical, high, and medium examples in Ankeny here in particular, and for most other communities, you'll see a similar map like this. Each project also is labeled with a project identification number, and that, if you go to the next slide, Gunnar, translates into a table that we will also provide with this, and that will provide the project number, the roadway designation, the start and end points of the segment, length, the prioritization score based on the scoring that was done for this exercise. The prioritization score is a kind of a combination of high injury network, risk factors, proximity to critical land use destinations like schools, et cetera, and also other factors as well. You can see what the tier is. In this case, it's a critical tier, so that's the highest scoring tier. And then I'll get into this high injury street profile here in just a second, but this one we've identified as a modern suburban arterial. That, if you go to the next slide, Gunnar, will connect to, in this case, I gave an example of a neighborhood cut throughs. It's not exactly the same one as that project I just highlighted on the last screen, but it will give you some kind of graphical examples of different combinations of countermeasures that you can use to implement. Obviously, each project is unique, and each community may have different needs or different perspectives on what combinations to use. But these are some examples of how you can piece things together to make safety projects happen. These countermeasures, if you go to the next screen here, Gunnar, for each project, we've also identified potential countermeasures. This is kind of say tools in the toolbox that we feel like could be used for this particular project. You can see that there's some that are, applicable, some that I've included a note. In this case, raised crossings are probably more applicable to side streets and driveway crossings rather than to the main roadway. So there's a note involved with that. And there's others that are not really applicable for the situation. So we've left that blank. If you go to the next slide, these countermeasures that we've listed for each project, we have put together fact sheets for each of these that have a lot of different technical and graphical data. I don't expect you guys to read everything that's on the screen here, but I'll just kind of briefly go through what information is included in these. This is the example from rapid rectangular flashlight beacon or pedestrian hybrid beacon example here, but there's a section for purpose and description. So what is it that these things are? Estimated relative cost for each, timeline for implementation, applicable locations and street types, different safety benefits, how each of these relates to the SUDAS guidance, expected crash reduction, and some other considerations and references if you care to do some more reading. And then, as you can see here, plenty of pictures of examples and also graphical representation of what this might look like in other places as well. So all of those things together are kind of a full, we use the word toolkit a lot, so I hope I'm not confusing you in this regard, but there's a lot of different tools that we're providing to each community here to be able to, for you guys all to take your projects to the next level and also be able to kind of use this information also for grant applications and for engaging and educating your elected officials and your public as well. So timeline for plan completion, and certainly there may be some questions on this at the end. I just want to go through kind of where we're shooting for here. January 30th, we're providing a full draft review or review set to the MPO staff for review. February 6th, we'll be back at TCC and Executive Committee for approval of that entire draft. February 20th is when the full plan approval would be going to the MPO Policy Committee. And I'll get into this in just a second, but kind of that March to May timeline with some question marks and asterisks in there is when we anticipate the grant application submittal to be live. More on that in just a second. If we go to the next slide, Connor. So I also wanted to provide a recap of the grant application kind of workshop that we did with you guys last month. We landed on this strategy option 2 of having many smaller spot treatments of safety countermeasures spread across the region, plus a few key corridor intersection reconstruction or modification projects. That more or less is in line with how the city of Des Moines was successful with their recent SS4 implementation application. Next slide, please. So some of the themes that we heard from the group, these next 2 slides are kind of the which countermeasures should we focus on, or which kind of more global or regional things, pieces of the application should we focus on. There seemed to be a lot of support for reducing conflicts at signals, whether that's through no turn on red, the pedestrian intervals, or I didn't put on here reflective backplates. Those all would be kind of a part of that whole subset of reducing conflict at signals. Next slide, please, Gunnar. Also, we heard a lot about enhancing pedestrian crossings, whether that's through refuge islands for crossing half the street at a time. RRFBs and PHBs are also known as HOCs as kind of more of a signal to increase yielding and stopping for vehicles for people crossing the street. And then also just a kind of a locational aspect of making sure we focus on kind of the safe routes to school, whether that's right outside of a school or intersections or corridors that are really important for people getting to school. in whatever transportation option that they choose to. And then we also just, obviously these things need to kind of connect back to the data, and both of these things did. In this particular example, a lot of the vulnerable road user fatal and serious injury crashes were recorded as entering or crossing roadways. So we're kind of connecting those countermeasures that help the entering and crossing roadway for vulnerable road users as well. And 24% of those vulnerable road user related fatal and serious injury crashes occurred within a quarter mile of the school. Next slide, please. We also got your feedback on some, we'll say, more corridor or level projects that the group was interested in. You can see the scanned map here of the results that we got. There were 12 areas that had at least 2 dots on the map. Of those 12 areas, 2 of them already have either a separately funded SS4A study, like State Highway 141 Grimes, or a very shortly forthcoming project to rebuild the roadway, such as, I believe that's US 69 in Ankeny. As far as the others go, we still need to kind of pare this down because we don't believe within that kind of $25 million plus match budget that's going to be able to support all 10 of these. So we are still working on kind of identifying which ones to focus on. So go to the next slide, please. So this timeline is for kind of that grant application. So this is slightly different than the plan overall itself. But I just want to share this with you as well. So obviously we're here today. We're working on getting those project locations identified. If there are already kind of concept designs or other, design or planning efforts that have gone through in some of these potential project locations, we'll take a look at those and provide some peer review. Otherwise, we'll start in on concept designs if there isn't already that kind of background work happened already. We'll be back at TTC on the 6th to kind of lay out exactly what this draft scope of a grant application is going to be. Following that, we will have individual project discussion meetings with the maintaining jurisdictions over the intervening month or so, just to make sure that each community that these projects are identified in are on board, are supportive, because that is definitely something that needs to happen so that we can get those, say, letters of support and just the community momentum for these projects going, and then also understand if there's any unique factors about any of these locations that we should know as we're kind of coming up with these concept designs. And then following those meetings, we'll revise concepts, come back to the TTC in April with that kind of final scope of a grant application. And we anticipate that the grant application will go live either later February or into March. And it's typically been about a 90-day turnaround process, which would put the deadline in May or early June. I put a big asterisk on that because of new administration and, we don't know. It seems like they revise something with this application every time they put it out. So we want to be a little cautious about that as well. But we're also kind of, we've worked with this program the last 3-4 years now and have, a decent idea of what we think this is going to look like. And then we'll just have to revise course if there are significant changes with the grant application when it does go live here coming up soon. So with that, I believe that is all we have for right now. I wanted to open up to any questions from the group.
Can you clarify that process you showed for further refining the projects for the application? Is that for the 12 or the 10 that you've identified, or is there?
That would be for, that's a great question. That would be for both the smaller spot type projects and the larger corridor type projects. We want to make sure even kind of those, we'll say smaller scope projects are fitting within the community as well, because those are going to be very important to the grant application too.
So you're anticipating meeting with each community, basically?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
So there will be quite a few meetings probably coming up in February, March to get to the finish line with that. Yep. I should also mention we have a meeting coming up with the DOT as well in January. So they are obviously they're aware from attending last month's meeting, and I think Shelby is tuning in remotely to this meeting as well. You know, some of those corridors identified and locations identified are on DOT facilities. So definitely they will be a part of the conversation as well.
Other questions?
So the schedule you had shown for approval of the draft plan, it had it like January 30th where the MPO gets it, but then just like 1 week later approving the draft. I mean, is there being enough time allowed to have a good review of the document before it's approved?
Gunnar, if you don't mind going back to that slide earlier on. So what we're going to do is we're going to get pieces of this to the MPO staff before January 30th. So we just want to make sure they have all the pieces in place on January 30th. So they're not getting, 100 pages or several hundred pages on January 30th. Because my understanding is it needs to go into your all's agenda packet on January 31st. So they need more than 24 hours. So they've already gotten several pieces of it, but they haven't gotten enough pieces of it to feel confident about the status of the draft plan. So that's what we're going to work toward, that January 30th date. And I'm putting together a detailed schedule for them right now so they understand what comes to them when and what's their review period and all of those things.
From a staff perspective, we scheduled it in such a way that you would have it for this meeting for review. And that was a miss. And so we're course correcting. And if you would like, we can send documents to this group as they come in. If you would like to have it that way, we are open to that. Or you can get them all with the packet for the February meeting.
100 pages, 7 days. Yeah, I mean, more time is better.
Right.
With everything else going on.
We hear you. And if the challenge is that the policy committee doesn't meet in March typically because of spring break conflicts and stuff, they just don't meet. February is not the end all be all. If we need to adjust, we can. That's just what we're going to shoot for. If we get to the February 6th meeting and you say we're not ready or this isn't ready, don't feel like we have to prove something you're not comfortable with. We can take more time and adjust. That's just what we want to shoot.
Our main goal, of course, with the plan is we want to make sure it supports that grant application and that funding opportunity. So the plan is intended to be, a lot of the chapters are going to be summaries of more detailed information, so that, if you don't have time to read through, a 75-page crash analysis memo, you can see that 5-page summary and give you the high points of it. So we're going to aim to make it reader friendly and easy, hopefully for you all to review within that 7-day time period.
I had 2 questions. When do you need concepts if one of these is identified as a possible location? Do you need we have a concept?
For Sean and Dean on that question. Could you hear that question?
It was a little hard to hear on my end, but was the question, when do we need concepts by?
Yes,
or the grant application? Okay. So it kind of depends on when the application comes out and is due, which is why we have kind of that April date as what we're shooting for that the final scope and whatnot. That being said, if we find that the dates are changed due to when the no-fill comes out and whatnot, we can be flexible on that as well. We just want, based on previous experience, that's kind of the April date that we're shooting for is based on that. It would just need to be done sometime before the grant application goes in and enough time to make sure that whoever is, the agency that is maintaining jurisdiction on that roadway that's identified for improvements is comfortable with what's shown, essentially.
Is this an application for federal fiscal year 26, starting in September of this year?
It is for federal fiscal year 25, I believe, but it takes a while to get the selection through, and then it takes also a while to get kind of that execution of the grant application through with FHWA. So these are projects, I believe the money has to be spent within 5 years of the grant application being executed with FHWA. And certainly, John, I think you could, with your experience in Des Moines, or Steve, you could tell me if I'm wrong about that, but I believe that's the timeline of it. And I know, John, you've got your hand up as well, so perhaps you can enlighten us too.
Yeah, so on that particular item or question, we are closing in on our execution of the agreement from our award, which was in the fall of last year. So it's more how fast people review things and get decisions. So I guess from our experience, I wouldn't anticipate an award any sooner than September or August of this year being announced. Might be varying because we don't know what's going to happen with a change of administration, and then your actual execution of the agreement would likely be sometime early 26, or the calendar year 26 would be my guess, but just based on what we've been experiences.
Yeah.
So I had a couple other questions, if I can. I guess on the vein of on the line of submitting, who will be submitting the grant application? Is it going to be the MPO? Is it going to be individual member agencies?
Plan is that it will be the MPO doing the submission as a regional submission, and we'll probably have projects in multiple communities.
Okay, so you're still going to need to have some sort of a concurrence from for those member agencies that are submitting. So need to kind of factor that in. As far as in Des Moines, we will have council action to do that. So timeline in that respect, if we go with this, I would agree with or support getting material more in advance. I don't really particularly care to have 4 days because I have other things on the weekend to review it before our next technical committee meeting in February. And I guess the other last question is, in terms of the prioritization that you've developed for the various communities, has it been any consideration from available funding, or is it financially feasible?
Are you talking for the? I assume you're talking, John, for the projects that will go into the grant application.
Right. Well, I'm speaking more of the prioritization of the projects. Has any fiscal component been applied in terms of prioritization?
Right. And I think that I'll let the guys from Tool elaborate on this, but I think that's part of the meetings that will be happening over the next couple of months, to go to those communities and say, hey, you're one of those top 10 or 12. Do you have concept plans? Would you be ready? Do you have funding available for a local match? And so forth, to help whittle down that list.
Okay. And then I guess my final question is, are we looking at providing any grant submittals in other than an implementation grant, or more program or planning aspects, educational campaigns as an example?
Yeah, I think everything's on the table right now.
John, those components are going to be in the plan. but yeah, decisions haven't been made about whether that would be part of a, say, a grant application, or not at this point, but those, you'll see those by the time of your next meeting. So, you've got the menu of options that we're recommending, at least at this point. And then just to follow up on your point about, wanting to have materials further ahead, I think what I can do is, work with Gunner to perhaps package, things in two groups, things that we know will be ready a little earlier, and then things we know will be ready closer to that January 30th deadline. So I'll work with him to figure out what the team is comfortable with, to make sure it's ready for your all's review.
All right, thank you very much.
Of course.
Yeah, and John, I'll chime in about your question about the fiscal component of it. The project list that we've put together, we tried not to have projects that are miles and miles long. We tried to kind of limit them, especially in urban areas, to say like half a mile, plus or minus a little bit, rather than reconstructing 5 miles of urban roadway, because that's not gonna, no one community really can do that in a a single swoop in a lot of cases. So we did factor that in. It's not say directly a hard and fast rule, but I did try to factor that in as we were coming up with this project list as well.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Anything else? All right, any final comments? We move on.
We'll keep things coming to you as fast as we can get them from Tool. We're gonna stay on top of this. Staff perspective, we're disappointed that we're in this situation as well. But we'll work. But
We're gonna move on to item 5. It's a report and vote on the targets for the comprehensive safety action plan.
thank you. This is a continuation of the discussion we just had. As part of the comprehensive safety action plan, the MPO needs to adopt targets for reaching 0 fatalities and serious injuries. We've had discussions about this in the past, including with the safety committee, tech, exec, and policy. And we believe there is consensus around the goal of eliminating fatal and serious injury crashes by the target year of 2045. That roughly maps out into a decline of 5 percentage points per year out to 2045. I believe you've seen this in the past, but I want to share it again as a refresher. So we do have a draft resolution assembled for you. It was in your packet. I don't know if you had a chance to review it, but basically it encompasses what we've discussed. And it is consistent with the city of Des Moines and Dallas County goals. They're actually a little bit more aggressive of 2040. So this is before you for your consideration, and we recommend approval.
Any questions, comments before I ask for a motion in a second? Okay, I get a motion.
I guess just from a discussion standpoint,
Yeah.
I mean, do we think that's realistic just from a practical standpoint? I mean, it's a great goal. But from the trend's going up, which isn't good. We need to change that, but in the next 20 years, is going to 0 realistic versus like a 50% reduction?
There's over 300 traffic deaths this year. How many of those 300 and some are related to safety measures that we even have control? I mean, we're asking for 0, and then, if you set a goal that's unrealistic, it's hard to really put a lot of effort into something that's not going to ever happen anyway. And it seems like I agree, shooting for something. It's cold to say that's not what our goal should be. I understand that we don't want to have. You're not only saying deaths, you're saying serious injuries. I mean, 0, that's to me a big step.
And sorry.
I'd also add that, I watched the number at the end of every year, and we're right around 310. I think we were up about 317, 320 a few years ago. So maybe we've knocked off 10 in the last 5 or 7 years. And that's good. And you hope it's not you, but or anybody you know, but I don't see us getting to zero in 20 years. And I feel like that's an unrealistic expectation.
Is the requirement that the goal be zero? I know we discussed this a lot in summer.
Dean, will you speak to that, please?
And I've actually got the language pulled up. If that would help, I can read it off to you all.
Yeah, go ahead,
Don't
Sean.
mean to interrupt you, Dean, but
No, go right ahead.
okay. So what FHWA requires, and this is that link that I mentioned earlier in the slide deck. So it says in this plan, there needs to be an official commitment by a high-ranking official or governing body, such as an MPO policy board, to an eventual goal of zero roadway fatalities and serious injuries. The commitment must include a goal and timeline for eliminating roadway fatalities and serious injuries achieved through one or both of the following. One, the target date for achieving zero roadway fatalities and serious injuries. Or two, an ambitious percentage reduction of roadway fatalities and serious injuries by a specific date with an eventual goal of eliminating roadway fatalities and serious injuries. So I think it means you can just set simply a date, or you can set those percentage reductions toward an eventual date. So you can be very high level, or you can get a little more specific. But that date is flexible, but it has to be there has to be a date.
What's one date for zero?
Yeah, John has his hand up. I wonder if you want to say something. Online.
Yeah, go for it, John.
Yeah, yes. I've been involved with a lot of discussions. Most recently this week at the Transportation Research Board annual meeting in terms of Vision Zero, the safe system approach. And also the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which I serve as the immediate past president. And we've put together a roadmap for safety for ITE. And one of the points that we have in there mirrors the safe system approach, which is that it is desirable and our goal is to reduce deaths and serious injuries to zero. That being said, yes, it's going to take a long time. If you look to the folks that have already had the safe system approach and Vision Zero over in Europe, they've been doing this for over 30 years. They're not quite yet to zero on a consistent basis. They may not have reached zero. But as what I said to the ITE International Board of Direction, what is our choice? We don't want deaths. We want to improve safety. We are not going to be able to do everything as engineers or planners. There's got to be other people that have to come to the table. Our auto manufacturers need to come to the table to make vehicles safer on the outside for the vulnerable users. They're really safe on the inside, and that's what they market. But an F-150 doesn't take much speed to really do damage to somebody who's walking or riding a motorcycle or a bicycle or even a smaller vehicle. So in my mind, we really don't have a choice, whether it be 2040. That's a great, I don't think it's personally reasonable that we'll reach it, but we need to strive for that. And if we don't, then I don't know why we're even doing this, quite frankly.
I can share that this question has been wrestled with at the policy committee level as well. And the sentiment there was, yes, I don't know if it is realistic. However, we want to communicate our commitment to getting there. And so they thought the aspirational goal was the correct choice given the situation.
Question. There is no penalty if the goal is not met either, correct?
That's my understanding. I'd let Dean or Sean jump in.
Correct. At least as of right now, there isn't a penalty that we're, yeah, correct.
Everybody's having to do it. Everybody's struggling with the same question, setting similar goals.
Can we set, it sounds like we could set a percentage. I mean, if we consistently hit 1% a year, maybe that's too low, but if we consistently hit that, I mean, that, right, I mean, just looking at the numbers for the last 5 years, 2020 was 343, 21 was 356, 22 was 336, 23 was 378, 24 was 353. I mean, we're just bouncing around that goal. I mean, even if we hit 1% a year, I mean, and consistently, we would be making progress, more progress than we are now with the goal of zero.
Well, it sounds like ultimately we have to have a goal for zero at some point, wherever that is, or we can't.
I thought it was either a goal of zero in a certain year or just a percent reduction.
Or percentage to get to zero.
Yeah,
So you have to,
You still would
we
need
passed the
to
very,
yeah.
2,300 or whatever.
But it'd
1% a
be,
year.
but I'm saying, a percentage would almost be attainable, well, maybe attainable, but it'd be, you could focus a little bit better on, okay, we just gotta shave off a few a year.
I agree with you. You gotta go to zero, passing the fairy tale. Let's just pass it.
Yeah.
Meet the requirements of the grant.
There we go.
Where you have the flexibility is the year that you set. Even if you decide to go with a percentage, you still need to set a year, but that's where your flexibility is with the year.
So.
Luis, if I could, I was at a meeting in October in Portland, Oregon with other communities, Vision Zero coordinators. One of the most striking commentary came from the city of Philadelphia. Their goal in their Vision Zero plan, which they developed about 10 years ago, was in 2025. Obviously they're not hitting that goal, but what they've done to try to chunk it down and bite size it is to say we want a goal in the next 10 years or so to have a safety related project on every corridor or segment of their high injury network. So try to put it into a context that they can control from an infrastructure standpoint. They still have their goal, and I think they're going to be revising it to a later date. I don't know what that date is going to be, but that's the other element that they've come into play. So,
To the tool team, I assume there'll be other metrics. Like, it's not like we're gonna be 5 years down the line and say, we're not at zero, we failed. I assume there's other metrics, like John's saying, around what's been implemented or reductions in specific types of crashes.
Yeah, that's a great point. So yeah, there's progress and transparency as a part of the plan itself, and that's not that will report the number that we're talking about here, but it'll also report more of the nuance with that. Like what types of crashes have been successful in being, reduced. Kind of gives you a measuring stick as to like, how are you guys going towards that goal? How are we communicating well with the public regarding this, or et cetera, et cetera. So it's more than just number of fatal and serious injury crashes. There's a lot more that'll be reported with that as well. And this is also, the SS4A program suggests that these plans and associated goals get revisited essentially every 5 years or so. Not saying that you're going to necessarily revise your goal, that often, but there is the idea that this is, not the last time that, the MPO and member communities are going to be talking about this for the next 20 years, if 2045 is the year that's, selected. There is the idea that there are check-ins along the way and revisions of strategy if necessary.
Yeah,
I want to add, I'm sorry.
Just to the question of like what we can control, I think there's ways to look at what we can control and how we impact what we can control. Rather than, of course, you need a global goal. And like John was saying, there's lots of other people not in this room that are going to contribute to the ultimate achievement of that. But I think if the plan can have metrics that are really tailored, especially to these engineering projects, which we're talking the most about, and seeing how those things, as they're implemented, are impacting the outcomes.
The other thing I want to add is that one section of the plan also is going to be policy and process changes. So hopefully we can get that document to you all earlier rather than later. Before January 30th is what I mean. And specifically what does the MPO have within its power to change? Obviously, there are a lot of other players that are outside forces that we can't control, but what can the MPO control with several of the funding mechanisms that the federal government has given? So I think that can also help provide, it's not just a grant application through Safe Streets for All. What about these other federal funding programs as well? So we want to be able to give those to you all so you can chew on those as well. And that may influence what you think as well about the goal.
Having a goal of 0, do we feel like that could help our application versus say?
It's required.
It's required.
0 part is required.
Zero.
The date is what we
Okay.
have the most
Okay.
control
All right, thank you.
And I think we have a recommendation, but as you've seen, there's other dates that have been considered. I think, if people have other dates that make them more comfortable that we want to vote on, by all means, I think the team has come up with something that is far further out, more realistic, and consistent with those other plans that have already been adopted in the region.
So I think we have a couple of paths for us. One is, I'm sensing unease here. I understand that, I get that. I think from a staff perspective, this was discussed, this is where we landed, and so we brought it to you for consideration. My preferred approach would be to take these 6 bites. However, if you want to open this up for discussion again, we are happy to do that with you. And then we'd be in a position of having to adopt this in February concurrently with the plan.
I'll just say from my perspective, whatever date you put in there, I think is unrealistic and next to impossible. So if we have to do it to move forward with the grant, let's just put something in there and go. It's not going to change whether we say 2045, 2055, 2175. I mean, it's.
That's how I would feel about it. And I think that's how your policymakers are feeling about it, is we need to do this. It's the right thing to do, and we need an aspirational goal. So that's how they're doing.
Work related to this.
And I think if maybe some of those concerns are raised by the policy committee, we can think about the resolution itself. Whether there's any language in the resolution that would make people feel more comfortable. Like some of the thoughts around, not all this is in the control of the MPO. I think right now it's written very strongly, probably should be compelling to those who are going to be doing the grant application. But if it make people feel more comfortable in what they're actually approving, acknowledges that there's things that are in the MPO's control or in the member community's control. That could be added to the resolution. I would suggest the policy committee talk that through if they're not comfortable. But
so I'm a little bit nervous about holding off until February to have policy make a decision on this, because it is kind of hard pill to swallow. Like I totally get it. I feel it. So maybe a hybrid approach is if there's a handful of people who wanted to work on something between now and policy later this month, that would be an approach. But what I absolutely don't want to do is put us in a position of missing the NOFA this year. That is my top priority. That's from a staff perspective, that's what we want to deliver to you, is being eligible for the next round.
Hey, Luis, this is Steve. Sorry I couldn't make it at a personnel matter this morning, but I guess I'd be happy to make a motion for target year 2045. That's 20 years from now. I do understand the skepticism. I mean, you could drive to work and watch people on their cell phones swerve all over the place every single day, and there's a lot of other factors. Our state legislation sometimes doesn't help us with ATEs and whatnot, but there are cities that have gotten 0, and they're not even small cities. I mean, I think there was a city in New Jersey that was, I want to say 60, 70,000 people. They had 0 deaths for a handful of years. Now, granted, they're more. And I think it was something like Utah. Then yeah, we definitely won't get there. But if somehow we can get it to the front of electeds and all the leaders, that is the focus safety, or is it getting people from A to B as fast as possible and designing for peak hours and stuff like that, then then yeah, I think that's the only way you're gonna get there is if you get everyone in the right focus. So I'd make a motion. I'll make a motion for target year 2045.
So we have a motion. I'm going to ask for a second. I'm not going to cut off discussion there because I realize others might still have counter proposals. But just since we have the motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Madeline. So we have a motion, a second. Does anybody have any further discussion? Again, open to other ideas. Gunnar, I shared a couple of ideas of how we can continue to fine tune this, recognizing that that we're not, some of us are still feeling a little uncomfortable with the kind of magnitude of that goal. Okay. Then we will take a vote on this. All those in favor of the motion, which I believe was 0 deaths by 2045, right? Please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you for walking us through that and further discussion. Appreciate that. Next up, Addison, I believe you have a report on regional safety performance targets.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'll be presenting a report discussion only, regional safety performance targets 1 and 2. So Federal Highway Administration and the Highway Safety Improvement Program require state DOTs and MPOs to annually report safety performance measures. MPOs can adopt statewide targets or develop their own regional targets. Previously, the MPO has chosen to adopt the statewide targets, but with the development of the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan and the Vision Zero at 2045, MPO staff proposed to adopt regional safety performance targets, our own, not the statewide ones. But of course, there are no penalties for MPOs not meeting or making significant progress towards those targets. Point 2, no. So with that 2045 goal and an assumed goal of decreasing fatal and serious injuries by 5 annual percentage points, I present to you the 21 through 2025 targets of 40.7, which you will notice is a slight increase from the 2019 to 2023 baseline. That is because of a spike in, or I should say, larger number of deaths in 2024, which are inflated that number a bit. Fatality rate also being slightly larger, not by much there. Number of serious injuries decrease for the 2021 to 2025 target, as with the serious injury rate. Happy to take any questions.
Just so I understand, we're on a number of these, they're increasing.
Yes.
Even though our goal is to decrease.
So it's a percentage decrease from, I guess what's not being shown here is that the 2024 numbers bring up our 2020 through 2024 baseline up from 40.4, but then the 40.7 target for that 5-year average is a percentage decrease. In fact, a 5 percentage point decrease
From the
observed numbers between 2020 and 2024. Correct.
So just taking the fatalities, 40.4, was that the last approved goal?
Those are the observed numbers between 2019 and 2020.
And then you're saying the 2024, which is not shown, brought that up higher to, I don't know, whatever the math is, 5% more than 40.7?
4.7, yeah.
Other questions? I would encourage maybe when you present it next time to show that, just so that, because it's, we just fought and argued hard to.
So maybe we can show what we did last time, because last time would have been the 2020 through 2024 target,
yes,
which would be above what we're showing now. So, yeah, we have to follow a methodology, and that can make things a little confusing.
Further on that, I'll present pavement and bridge performance targets on slide 2. Same deal here under the MAP 21 and FAST Acts, state DOTs and MPOs set pavement and bridge performance measures. The Iowa DOT is adjusting a few of its 4-year targets, and MPOs can either support statewide 4-year targets or develop their own regional targets. Previously, the MPO adopted Iowa DOT statewide performance targets. And same with performance measure one, there are no penalties for MPOs not meeting or making progress toward those targets. So a few of the 2022 through 2025 4-year targets are adjusted. I have those bolded on the right there. So percentage of pavements of the interstate system in good condition, 53%, percentage of pavements of the non-interstate in good condition, 30%, and percentage of NHS bridges classified as in good condition, at 48%, and then the other three see no change for the 2022 targets, 2022 through 2025 targets.
Does this come with additional funding to reach the goals?
Sorry.
Does this come with additional funding to reach the goals?
No.
Any questions for Addison?
What was your thinking behind the reduction for the percentage of pavements of non-interstate in good condition from the 35% the prior 4-year target to now the 30%?
These are the statewide DOT targets. Okay. So for performance measure one, adopting our own targets in line with the zero goal, and then for these, just adopting the statewide targets.
It's just on the NHS, that's all it is, with the non-interstate.
I thought there was some discussion about just the amount of money that's become available and been in number of projects being implemented. That was that part of the reasoning for lowering that?
I can get back to you on that.
No, it's okay. I thought I remember that from previous discussion, but. Okay, you good with that item? Item 7, or sorry, no, we're going on to 8. Trail counter, Carl.
Right, so the MPO tracks trail usage on our regional trails, regional significance. And these trails are actually approved by the Bikehead Roundtable. These trails to understand how our trails are being used by both pedestrians and bicyclists. Currently, we have 7 regional trail counters on our trail system today, but that does not quite cover the entire trail network. And we get requests periodically, and sometimes we have to say we don't have the data. So in order to better understand how our trails are being used, we propose to add 13 new trail counters. Those trail counters that are proposed are in your packets today and on the map shown. So we'd like to get your input on these locations. And then next month, we'll come back to you to finalize these locations and bring them to policy to approve and then purchase new trail counters for our regional trail network. With that, I take any questions that you might have.
Do you want our feedback now, or you want us to follow up?
Follow up. I mean, I don't think we have feedback right now, but following would be great. We'll also be going to the Bikehead Roundtable to work with them on these locations and then have them finalize their recommendations and then bring that back to you next month.
Cost?
About $200,000.
We did set aside funding from, it's in this fiscal year's budget for the MPO to do this purchase. So we do have the funds there. We just need to finalize the location, the product, all the things.
Okay, so yeah, follow up with Carl between now and when?
Next few weeks, 5 weeks.
Questions? Carl? Item 9, Dylan, update on the Unified Work Program?
Yeah, thank you. It's time of the year where we start to work on our work program and budget development. This is what we do every year. The work program is a federally required thing that basically shows how we're going to use the federal funds we receive, not the infrastructure dollars, not the STVG funds, but the actual operating dollars we receive that funds the organization. New for this year, we are going to throw in a wrinkle of strategic planning. It's been since 2018 since we've updated our strategic plan. We've been doing work over the last several months with our governance update. We've done some staffing related strategic planning. So this will continue that on and really try to align these and make the work program the time and the document in which we do some of the strategic planning. If you go to the next slide, one thing that we want to start getting you in the mindset of is the areas of work that the MPO, works within. We have our core federally required things like our work program, our long range plan, our TIP and so forth. But we're also a membership organization. So we want to make sure that we are being responsive to what you want from us. We've done this over the years. We'll typically solicit from you what projects you want to see us do, whether that's something that is for the region or it's just something for each individual community. So right now, for example, we're working with Windsor Heights on a raise grant application. That's something they brought to us, we brought to our board blessed it and said, yep, you can go ahead and do that. Those are the types of things we can do for our communities. A third, and some of these language of what we're calling these might change, but a third area that we want to just keep in mind are some of these big regional projects, such as the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, such as Transload, Water Trails, Tomorrow Plan, whatever it's been in the past. What's our next thing going to be? So keep those things in mind as we start to work through this. And that's the purpose of the strategic document. That's the purpose of the work program, is what is the MPO going to do? And not just the MPO, the 8 of us that work here, all of us, all the regional communities, all of our members, all our representatives. What are we collectively going to work on the next year, 18 months? So homework for you all, if you go to the next slide, we have 2 requests. One is provide us any project ideas that you have, something maybe you need for the region or you need locally for your community, or something you just have in mind for the region. Hey, it would be great if we had a study that looked at this, whatever it might be. Number 2 is developing or completing a SWOT analysis, a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threat analysis for that strategic planning plan. That part's new. We haven't asked that of you in the past. There's a link in the agenda packet to how to fill that out and some instructions for that. We'd like both of these in by the end of the month if possible. And then there'll be a subcommittee put together for the strategic planning process. I'm trying to talk to our MPO chair about having a couple technical representatives involved in that. So it's not just policy folks, that we have some folks from this committee actually involved too. We'll see how that goes. I think they're open to that, but I'll get you more information next time on how that actually shakes out. We're going to try to move pretty rapidly on this. A work program has to be approved as a draft in March, and then it has to be approved as a final in May. So all of this will happen over the spring here, bringing this together. If there's questions, if you have ideas, anything comes up in the meantime, please let me know. Otherwise, this will be a recurring item for the next several months as we continue to work through this.
So the SWOT analysis is, what do we think is a strength of the MPO?
Yeah.
And et cetera.
Exactly. So as we look to do whatever it is we want the MPO to do, what are we well positioned for? What are our weaknesses? What opportunities exist, and so forth. And I should note that she's been more involved at the executive and policy committee, but Cassandra Hall's with To the Top consulting firm. She's going to be helping us facilitate this whole process too. So we do have some outside assistance.
Other questions? Okay, so we'll make sure we get that completed by the end of January. Item 10 was informational items. These are things that I think have been discussed before. There's some just reminders about SCBG and TAP applications, in particular, which are due tomorrow, which is in the packet. And upcoming events, are we going to speak to those? They're in there. Yep. Check out the links. A lot of things in there. Then we have other non-action items of interest to the committee. So first up is that at the February meeting, we'll be electing new officers for this group. And so I'd like to ask for anybody who's willing to participate in just an ad hoc nominating committee, email me. I'll send out an email after this. Or if you just have a nomination you want to make and you just want to send that in to me as well, or if you want to put yourself forward for chair or vice chair, just would appreciate that feedback. So we'll just gather a quick group to discuss and bring forward a recommendation at our next meeting, where we'll take a vote. Of course, other nominations will be welcome from the floor at that time as well.
Then we have one more. I think last month we mentioned that we were losing Z Chen as our senior planner, and I'm happy to welcome Marcus Kanan back to the MPO. Marcus worked for us about 5 years ago and left to explore the consulting world, and now he's back. So we should hit the ground running, which is great. Marcus is very familiar. I think a lot of you know him. So just want to welcome him back to the organization.
I think that is all for our agenda. Is there anything else from the committee? Other non-action items of interest? Hearing none, our next meeting date is February 6th. That'll be a big one, because of course, we're gonna be, hopefully going over the draft of the safety plan. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please give us an aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, great month. Thank you.